In the zero-sum game of national politics, one party's triumph must leave someone else wallowing in defeat. A case in point, President Trump's stunning opportunity to nominate a second Supreme Court justice. Justice Anthony Kennedy's announcement Wednesday afternoon that he will step down from the Supreme Court sets the stage for a historic, election year struggle over his replacement. A judge in the mold of Trump's first appointment, Neil Gorsuch, could solidify a more conservative court for a generation. But if Trump and Republicans are the big winners from Wednesday's news, a Supreme Court battle is just what Republicans need to fire up their base before midterm elections. Democrats, their donors, and the groups that support them are feeling understandably star-crossed. When news of the Kennedy retirement broke during a Democratic National Committee conference Wednesday, Politico reports it provoked audible gasps and groans of "oh" and "oh my God" from DNC members. MSNBC host Chris Matthews immediately took to the airwaves and called for Democrats to boycott the confirmation process. He warned that there will be hell to pay if they fail to block the president's next nominee. With that in mind, here is Newsmax's list of the 10 biggest losers stemming from Justice Kennedy's resignation. 1. Nancy Pelosi. So nervous is the former speaker about her party's ability to ride the blue wave back into power on Capitol Hill that she's taken to publicly attacking members of her own party, specifically California Rep. Maxine Waters, for making inflammatory statements that could remind Republican voters they have a reason to turn out and vote in November. For months Pelosi has been fighting a two-front war, trying to challenge Trump's agenda in the House while keeping her party's left wing from driving the party to the unelectable extreme of, say, fomenting violence in the name of European-style socialism. What can Pelosi do as House Minority Leader to influence the outcome of the confirmation process in the Senate? Nothing, of course, but to placate her party's leftward lurching she will have to evince a tone of moral outrage over Trump's nominee in the months ahead, which will only make it harder to convince voters that Democrats have any agenda for the nation beyond vilifying Donald Trump. 2. Chuck Schumer. The Senate Minority Leader wasted no time finding a television camera Wednesday to demand that Republicans abide by the so-called Biden rule, and delay any nomination until after the new Congress takes office. The reference was to a 1992 by then-Sen. Joe Biden of Delaware, who said no Supreme Court pick should be submitted in a presidential election year. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell invoked the Biden rule in 2016 to justify stonewalling President Obama's choice of Judge Merrick Garland to replace the late Justice Antonin Scalia. But in an email to the Daily Beast, McConnell spokesman Don Stewart noted Wednesday, "This is not a presidential election year. Like Pelosi, Wiley Schumer will have engaged in a bit of kabuki theater to placate his party's increasingly rabid base. But he will do so knowing a Donnybrook over another SCOT-US nominee may be just what President Trump needs to re-engage Republicans and drive them to the polls in November. If on the other hand Democrats lose a big SCOT-US battle just as the midterm election enters its final weeks, Schumer will face a different problem: how to mobilize a party that has just suffered a demoralizing defeat." 3. Democratic candidates. For all of the reasons cited above, Democratic candidates figure to be among the top losers in a bitter confirmation battle. While it's unlikely to affect political outcomes in true blue districts, like the one in the Bronx and Queens that just elected a 28-year-old Democratic Socialist over 10-term member of Congress Rep. Joe Crowley, giving Republicans a reason to flock to the polls could be costly in swing districts, let alone in red state burgs where Democrats were hoping to make inroads to recapture the House and possibly the Senate. Kurt Levy, the president of the Committee for Justice, a group that seeks judges committed to the rule of law and constitutionally based jurisprudence, tells Newsmax, "I think it's good news for Republicans in terms of keeping the House and Senate, because if you look at how much the Supreme Court issue helped Trump in 2016, I think it will also help the Republicans most directly in the Senate, but this rubs off onto the House as well." 4. Planned Parenthood, pro-life organizations such as Live Action and Susan B. Anthony lists see the replacement of Kennedy, whose approach to social issues could be unpredictable, as an opportunity to move them one vote closer to the holy grail of overturning Roe v. Wade. As such, losing Kennedy, who voted to affirm Roe in the 1992 Planned Parenthood v. Casey decision, is a significant setback from the nation's #1 abortion provider. Julie Rickleman, Senior Director of U.S. Litigation for the Pro-Abortion Center for Reproductive Rights, told Beacon.com on Wednesday, "The stakes are incredibly high." Kennedy had been the decisive vote in several cases preserving the rights to abortion, and as a result his retirement means the court could shift against the constitutional right to abortion and access to abortion. 5. Gun control activists' Second Amendment foes were so despondent Wednesday that one Huffington Post headline read, "Goodbye Justice Kennedy and goodbye gun control." Of course, what often goes unmentioned is that in 2009 Kennedy sided with a conservative majority in the landmark 5-4 District of Columbia v. Heller case that declared the Second Amendment protects an individual right to bear arms unconnected to service in a militia. Second Amendment activists would see another justice on the bench in the mold of Gorsuch or Alito as a major boon to their bid for concealed carry reciprocity, which would require all states to recognize the lawful status of concealed carry permits granted by any other state. 6. Open border advocates. Just as the president's travel ban was blocked by lower courts before being validated by the Supreme Court, any effort to genuinely seal up the southern border is sure to run afoul of an injunction, at least until the justices have their chance to weigh in. Putting another strong conservative on the bench means the president's plan to build a wall has a better chance of surviving an eventual court challenge, assuming of course that Congress ever comes up with the necessary funds to build it. 7. Proponents of universal voting. It seems barely a session goes by without a case reaching the Supreme Court stemming from efforts to prevent states from verifying that the people voting in their elections are actually eligible citizens. On the left, voter ID measures are known as attempts at voter suppression. On the right, they're known by a different rubric, common sense. Whichever side of the aisle you're on, a more conservative court is liable to be much less sympathetic to the notion that it's somehow inhumane to clean up old voter rolls and otherwise enhance the validity of U.S. elections. 8. Tom Steyer, the California billionaire hedge fund owner, immediately reacted Wednesday to the news of Kennedy's resignation, tweeting that, "Americans are threatened with a disastrous shift in our Supreme Court and its role in upholding democratic values." In a blatant call for resistance he added, "We cannot allow a lawless president, currently under investigation by the FBI, to steal another seat on our Supreme Court. Our leadership must stop Trump from bending the integrity of our courts more than he has already." Steyer routinely calls for Trump's impeachment and is rumored to be considering a presidential run himself in 2020, spent over $90 million to influence elections in 2016. But if Trump can put another genuine conservative on the high court, conservatives say it would serve to limit even the damage that a future president, Steyer, could do. And Human Rights Campaign, the nation's leading advocate for expanding LGBT rights in America, will be sad to see Kennedy enter retirement. Kennedy joined with the court's liberal wing to author the majority opinion in Obergefell v. Hodges, the landmark decision that held states' bans on same-sex marriage violated the constitutional right to equal protection and due process under the 14th Amendment. HRC Wednesday called on the Senate not to consider a Supreme Court nominee prior to November, declaring, "The 2018 midterm elections just became the most consequential election of our lifetime." 10. Justice Sonia Sotomayor, along with fellow Justice Elena Kagan, Justice Sotomayor has emerged as a leading liberal voice on the Supreme Court. Her dissent in the court's decision to uphold the president's authority to issue a travel ban from certain countries declared, "Our Constitution demands, and our country deserves, a judiciary willing to hold the coordinate branches to account when they defy our most sacred legal commitments, but without at least the hope of a defection from the court's conservative wing to support her cause, Sotomayor may increasingly find herself a lonely voice in the wilderness." Politics in the zero-sum game of national politics, one party's triumph must leave someone else wallowing in defeat. A case in point, President Trump's stunning opportunity to nominate a second Supreme Court justice. A Supreme Court Justice nomination, Anthony Kennedy 1527 Thursday 28 June 2018 12:56 p.m. 201-856-28 Thursday 28 June 2018 12:56 p.m. Newsmax Inc.